Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. I think here we go. Yes, here we go. On today's show, Lara Trump's very disappointing announcement. This is very sad. Why does bad news always happen this time of year? Matt Gaetz discovers women who accept 10 grand for sex aren't necessarily your girlfriends. Elon Musk is cheating on Donald Trump. It turns out Elon Musk has been giving hundreds of millions of dollars on the side to other fascists in Germany, Italy, and Great Britain. You know, you think you can trust someone and then they break your heart. More on that later in the show. Did you see 60 Minutes? 60 Minutes reported Sunday night Mexico has just one gun store. It's called the United States of America. All the guns in Mexico come from America. We're busy complaining about their bringing us fentanyl. We're giving them guns, like all of them. There's one gun store in Mexico, and it's controlled by the military. If a civilian wants to buy a weapon, you have to pass psychological tests. You got to go through background checks, drug screenings. Panama's leader tells Donald Trump the canal does not belong to Donald Trump. I'll have more on that later on in the show. And ex-staffers call Congresswoman Nancy Mace the transphobic lunatic. They call her mentally unbalanced, and that's putting it nicely. I'll have more on that. But first, this is the mop-up for December 23rd, 2024. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for finding me. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed. And of course, the best way to help me this holiday season is to share these episodes. Copy and paste the link to these episodes and share them with your friends. That's the best way to help. And of course, go to shopdavidfeldman.com to buy worthless crap that you don't need. New York City police arrested 2 striking Amazon workers outside the JFK warehouse in Staten Island, where the struggle for unionization at Amazon first began nearly 4 years ago with Christian Smalls, who's been on the show. This is not the first time New York City police have arrested union organizers outside Amazon's Staten Island warehouse. The New York City Police Commissioner, Jessica Tisch, who ordered the arrests, is literally a billionaire. Jessica Tisch, the New York City Police Commissioner, is heir to the Tisch family fortune, which that fortune comes from, among other things, tobacco and insurance. Good people, the Tisches. Amazon strikes are taking place at 7 warehouses in Southern California, San Francisco, New York City, of course, and Atlanta, as well as Skokie, Illinois. The Amazon union joined the Teamsters. Amazon still refuses to negotiate with the Amazon Labor Union, which was formed in 2022 and is authorized by the National Labor Relations Board. Amazon is breaking the law, yet billionaire Jessica Tisch, New York City Police Commissioner, arrests the striking Amazon workers. Rotten hell, Jessica Tisch. These strikes are authorized by the National Labor Relations Board, and Amazon is not negotiating. That's against the law. Amazon lawyers are now challenging the constitutionality of the NLRB, one of the cornerstones of the American labor movement. Amazon employs 800,000 workers in the United States. It is our nation's second largest private employer. Meanwhile, Workers United, representing 10,000 Starbucks workers in more than 525 stores, expanded their 5-day strike, which has now grown into 9 states, including the cities of Chicago, Los Angeles, and the hometown of Starbucks, Seattle. Amazon and Starbucks are from Seattle. Starbucks is negotiating with the newly formed Starbucks union, but is offering its baristas a 0% wage increase, hence the strike. Back to Amazon, whose founder, Jeff Bezos, took to social media last night to deny reporting in the Daily Mail that he is marrying his girlfriend this week in Aspen and is planning to spend $500 million on it. Well, he recently purchased a yacht for the same price. It only figures a wife would cost this homunculus, Jeff Bezos, about the same price. I would say in order for Jeff Bezos to find anyone willing to marry him, it would cost about as much as a yacht. Bezos said on Twitter about the article in the Daily Mail, quote, "Don't believe everything you read." Yeah, don't believe everything you read, especially in the Washington Post, ever since Jeff Bezos bought it. Actually, that's not fair. Their editorials you shouldn't read. But it's the Washington Post is actually a great, great, great newspaper. Everybody should support the Washington Post, even if it's owned by the monster, Jeff Bezos. Donald Trump said Sunday he wants the Panama Canal back and might take it by force if necessary. Trump made those comments during a speech Sunday night at a Turning Point Action Conference in Arizona. Now, why? Why did he say that? Because someone at Mar-a-Lago complained about the shipping fees through the Panama Canal, and this is pretty much how we're going to spend the next 2 years if we allow it. Every day, Trump will make a grand pronouncement that will never, ever come to fruition. Remember, he wanted to trade Greenland for Puerto Rico? He's going to keep doing this every day. He's going to try to control the news cycle. And the media will chase this down for 24 hours. You're going to hear nothing but Panama, Panama, Panama today. And then after today, no longer Panama. Tomorrow, he's going to invade Canada, which is no longer out of the realm of possibility. Trump is not satisfied with attacking our neighbors to the south. Trump has now turned his sights to the north, blaming Canadians for the influx of immigrants and fentanyl. Trump blamed undocumented immigrants from Canada and Mexico for the 300,000, he said 300,000 Americans dying each year from fentanyl. That's what he said yesterday in Arizona. Well, let's unpack these lies. He said 300,000 Americans are dying each year from fentanyl. It's 90,000. The Economist reports this morning that data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says that the overdose death rates peaked in August of 2023. The past 12 months saw approximately 90,000 deaths from fentanyl. And the other lie is that undocumented immigrants are bringing the fentanyl into the country, according to many sources, including the conservative think tank Cato. Practically all fentanyl is brought into the United States by American citizens with passports, bringing it over the border at legal crossings. Then Donald Trump, at Turning Points in Arizona yesterday, commanded Ted Cruz to come up on stage and pay homage to Mein Fuhrer.
Where's Ted Cruz? Is he here? He's here someplace. Ted? Ted? Oh, he's in trouble. Oh.
Look at him debase himself. Watch Ted Cruz debase.
No, he was here. Oh, good. He's not in trouble.
Wow. Now, you might remember, isn't that great? Isn't that just their hugging there? You might remember Ted Cruz ran against Donald Trump in 2016, and Ted was the last candidate standing against Donald Trump in 2016. He refused to endorse Donald Trump at the convention in Cleveland. It turned into a pretty nasty dogfight between Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. Words were spoken, not nice words, not nice. And I just think this hug is testimony to how magnanimous Donald Trump can be. Donald Trump found it in his heart to forgive Ted Cruz for having an ugly wife and a father who killed JFK. That's the kind of guy, that's the kind of Christian Donald Trump is. Way more charitable than I could ever be. You know, maybe I could forgive Ted Cruz for having an ugly wife. Maybe. Maybe I could forgive Ted Cruz for having a dad who killed JFK. But to have both, an ugly wife and a father who was in on the Kennedy assassination, unlike Donald Trump, there's too much darkness in my heart. I could not forgive Donald Trump. I could not forgive Ted Cruz the way Donald Trump can. Then Trump assured the crowd he's running things, not Elon Musk. He's getting very defensive. People are saying that it's Elon Musk running the show and not Donald Trump. And it's not just Democrats who are saying Musk is running things. On CNN yesterday, Tennessee Senator Bill Hagerty praised Elon Musk for working to keep our government open. Hagerty said, quote, Elon Musk's transparency helped make that happen. His transparency. He's the government. And Byron Donalds, the Florida House Republican, who doesn't know he's black, Byron Donalds said after the deal was struck, quote unquote, thank God for Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. Well, if you're a Republican who doesn't know you're black, I guess you would thank God for Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. The speech was yesterday afternoon in Arizona at Turning Points. Yesterday, Trump said Musk is not in charge. Trump said he can't be, and he's not going to be president. That I can tell you. This is what Trump said, quote, and I'm safe. You know why Musk can't be president? He wasn't born in this country. Wow. You know Donald Trump is desperate when he's resorting to birtherism. Despite all his business with NASA and the Pentagon, Elon Musk has not been granted security clearance to work inside Trump's White House. The U.S. military and Israel have both reportedly deemed Elon Musk a possible security risk. Three separate Pentagon investigations have raised doubt and concern about Elon Musk's previous drug use and his contacts with American enemies like Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. There are reports that Musk has refused to comply with the military's request for information about his travel as well as his contact with foreign leaders, even though Elon Musk's satellite company does business with NASA and the Pentagon. But I'm sure he's got nothing to worry about. Elon says, touch your toes. Elon says, touch your nose. Elon says, touch your belly. Give me security clearance. I didn't say Elon says. Go sit down. Well, after giving more than $250 this year to Donald Trump's presidential campaign, Musk has begun pouring money into other anti-immigrant, far-right, racist, authoritarian candidates throughout Europe. He recently said only the AfD can save Germany. AfD is a racist, anti-immigrant party made up of neo-Nazis who want to deport Muslims. He said of the criticism leveled against him for supporting AfD, He said, quote, "Why is there such a negative reaction from some people about AFD? They keep calling it far right, but the policies of AFD that I've read about don't sound extremist. Maybe I'm missing something," unquote. Yeah, a conscience? You were born in South Africa at the height of apartheid. Maybe that has something to do with it. Musk has also supported Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, who is the first fascist sympathizer to be elected since Mussolini. He's also supporting Reform UK leader Nigel Farage, who was behind Brexit and has a storied history of anti-Muslim bigotry. Senator Lara Trump. Sounds delicious, doesn't it? With Florida Senator Marco Rubio likely to become Donald Trump's Secretary of State, there has been pressure on Florida Governor Ron DeSantis to name Lara Trump, Donald's daughter-in-law, name her as Rubio's replacement. Well, this month, Lara Trump ended her brief tenure as co-chairwoman of the Republican National Committee. Wow, what are the odds that she would be co-chairwoman of the RNC and she's Donald Trump's daughter-in-law? What a small world. There's speculation that she quit the RNC to clear her very busy schedule so she could become Florida's next senator. But yesterday, Lara made it official. It's very sad. She said, I'm not interested in the job. I think the word you meant was, I'm not qualified, Lara. I'm not qualified for the job. Well, apparently she does back down. You know, that amazing cover of Tom Petty, I Won't Back Down. I mean, that was my anthem all year, her singing I Won't Back Down. Maybe she was lying. Maybe she does back down. But you know who says he's interested in becoming the next senator of Florida? Matt Gaetz. Gaetz says he might run for Rubio's seat 4 years from now when that term expires. They're going to get an interim replacement, then that seat expires. And Matt Gaetz says he's going to run for that seat 4 years from now. Now, before Trump took the stage in Arizona yesterday, his failed nominee for Attorney General, Matt Gaetz, spoke and said, I'm thinking of running for Marco Rubio's seat in 4 years, right around the time Matt Gaetz will have exhausted all his appeals and will probably be heading off to prison for allegedly violating the Mann Act. Allegedly, during yesterday's speech, Gaetz said he hoped Trump's pick, Pam Bondi, for Attorney General, and Kash Patel, Trump's pick for the FBI, he said he hopes they will work to end the weaponization of our Justice Department. And then he called on Donald Trump to, quote unquote, pardon the nonviolent January 6 defendants. Ah, yes, the nonviolent January 6 defendants. Let's find some nonviolent January. Do you see any nonviolent? Well, all right. Maybe those are the wrong pictures. I can't seem to find any. Christmas is coming 2 days early. Today, Monday, might be Christmas for some of us. The House Ethics Committee, their report on Matt Gaetz is scheduled for release today. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah and Kwanzaa. A month ago, you might remember, Matt Gaetz was poised to become America's top attorney. Now he's probably going to need one. Former Speaker Kevin McCarthy has repeatedly said Gaetz belongs in prison. McCarthy insists the reason Gaetz orchestrated McCarthy's removal as Speaker is because Gaetz asked him to make this ethics investigation go away. McCarthy told him, I can't. And so Gaetz led the coup against McCarthy. It's why we have Speaker Johnson right now. What we are expecting to read this morning in the ethics report is evidence that Gates may have used PayPal and Venmo to perhaps send as much as $10,000 to women, each, $10,000 each, to women who some think might have been prostitutes. There are also allegations that Gates had sex with underage women and engaged in drug-fueled orgies while he was a United States congressman. I hope that's not true. You know what? I don't believe it. But this is, some say, this is expected to be in the ethics report. We'll see. I mean, I hope it's not in the ethics report. And I'd hate to think that it's true. There are reports that one woman claims to have had sex with Matt Gaetz when she was just 17, and allegedly, according to her lawyer, I don't know if we can believe her lawyer, but this woman says she saw Gaetz having sex with a minor. Again, we don't know if this is true. I believe the best in people. Nothing about Matt Gaetz would lead me to believe these allegations are true, but it's what we are being told might be in today's ethics report. Gaetz has admitted to giving money to women, but he insists they were girlfriends, and I believe that. I have in the past Venmoed $10,000 to women I haven't met in person yet. That's what men do. That's what, you send $10,000 to a woman who you don't know. Gaetz is reportedly planning to show up to the Capitol on January 3rd and demand to be sworn in, despite giving up his seat to pursue his failed bid for Attorney General. There's going to be a special election to replace him at the end of winter. Gaetz is threatening, however, to come back to the House on January 3rd, get sworn in, and then create trouble in the next election for Speaker. He also is threatening to expose the names of all the members of Congress who use taxpayer dollars to settle sexual harassment suits filed against them by congressional staffers. This is something other Republicans have said they support Matt Gaetz on. They want to release the names of all the House members who settled sexual harassment suits filed by congressional staffers. We may end up with that as well. It's nice and juicy, and I can't wait to read the ethics report. Supposedly it's out today, and I hope Matt Gaetz makes a list of who's been naughty and nice in Congress. I want to know the members of the House who use taxpayer dollars to settle sexual harassment lawsuits. I love this kind of stuff. I do. I can't help it. But then again, the Pope, during his Christmas message, the Pope called gossip, quote unquote, an enemy of peace. And I like the Pope, and maybe he's right. He says gossip destroys your social life, it sickens people's hearts, and he says it leads to nothing. Yeah. But suppose the gossip is true. The Pope really hates gossip, and I know why. He had a bad experience filling in for Harvey Levin on TMZ Live. It left a really bad taste in his mouth. They were very stingy with the dressing room, and they didn't spring for a stretch Pope-mobile when they picked him up at the airport. I loved watching the Pope fill in for Harvey Levin on TMZ. The Pope can dish. He really can. So, but he's right. It does. Gossip does sicken people's hearts. Well, the last time we left Prince Andrew, he was not invited to Sandringham for Christmas. He is also reportedly not going to be doing the traditional royal family walkabout outside the family church on Christmas Day. His allowance has been completely cut off, and Prince Charles is trying to evict him from the Royal Lodge, the family's 30-room mansion, which has fallen into disrepair because Andrew can no longer afford the upkeep. is gotten so bad for Prince Andrew that he is thinking of moving to Bahrain, where he has been offered the use of a spare palace. This has all been reported. Now, we all know Prince Andrew was his mother's favorite, even though the Queen stripped him of his royal duties after paying a multi-million-dollar settlement with a victim of Jeffrey Epstein's, who was forced to have sex with Andrew 3 times, even though the palace had to pay that out for an undisclosed amount of money, millions and millions and millions, even though the Queen was angry and she said, "You're no longer working royal," he was still her favorite. And in her will, this is all true, the Queen left her beloved corgis to Andrew. She said, "I know he would take care of them." That's all he got in the will, the corgis. And now we are hearing reports that Andrew is furious with his dead mother for this humiliation and has stopped walking the corgis. This is what is being reported, that he's mad at his mother because all she left him were the corgis. I have a picture. This is the last recorded picture of Prince Andrew cleaning up after the corgis, telling them, "I'm done. If you have a problem with this, take it up with the Queen." There he is. That's not, I mean, that's how you treat your favorite child? You leave him nothing but those effing corgis? What a family. The odious, disgusting, anti-union, British-born Mark Burnett, who came to America and gave us Survivor and The Apprentice, has been named by Donald Trump as America's envoy to the United Kingdom. Well, maybe he'll stay there. Maybe he won't come back to the United States. Maybe he'll just stay in England and stop polluting America's airwaves with his noxious television shows. This man, Mark Burnett, is personally responsible for creating the lie that Donald Trump was a successful businessman. I'm not making this up. When Burnett met with Trump to discuss starring in The Apprentice, Trump was not only eyeball deep in debt, but Mark Burnett was appalled by the stench inside Trump Tower. This is true. The furniture was threadbare. He was broke. Trump was broke. And the carpet on Trump's floor was moldy and stunk almost as bad as the carpet on top of Trump's head. I swear to you, this is true. Burnett and the producers of The Apprentice, when they met with Trump, were appalled by the stench inside Donald Trump's office. It's in a new book called Lucky Loser. Came out last month. I devoured it. It's written by Russ Bettner and Susan Craig. They're two Pulitzer Prize-winning journalists from the New York Times. And they write, Trump Tower smelled to high heaven. Get the book. Mark Burnett created the lie that Donald Trump is a successful businessman. By the way, Burnett reportedly has a few hours of tapes of Trump on the set of The Apprentice using the N-word and the C-word, but he hasn't released them. There are a lot of employees who worked on The Apprentice whose NDAs have expired, and they have said that they heard Donald Trump use these words. So, how we doing? As you know, a government shutdown has been narrowly averted once again. The unhinged Nancy Mace, she's the Republican from South Carolina, defied Donald Trump's orders and joined 37 other House Republicans to vote against the continuing resolution. This would be the second version of the continuing resolution that was crafted by Elon Musk and Donald Trump. This was voted on Thursday. It would have lifted the debt ceiling. It failed. 38 Republicans voted against it. Trump wanted the debt ceiling lifted last week when Biden was still president, so Trump wouldn't get blamed for lifting the debt ceiling next year when he adds trillions to our national debt after he gives tax cuts to the wealthy billionaires. And if he doesn't give those tax cuts to the wealthy billionaires, Mark Burnett is probably going to release those tapes of Donald Trump using the C word and the N word. Omarosa was on Meet the Press and said, I heard him use the N word. Former Republican Congressman Trey Gowdy has a show on Fox News. He attacked the unhinged Nancy Mace for voting against Trump's continuing resolution on Thursday. Well, Nancy Mace took to Twitter late Thursday night and accused Trey Gowdy of being a transgender male, adding, quote, which bathroom do we think Trey Gowdy uses? Amazing. She needs help. She needs help. And I'm not the only one saying this. Nancy Mace has made attacking the transgender community her core issue after she succeeded in getting Mike Johnson to ban America's first transgender member of Congress, Democrat Sarah McBride, from using congressional washrooms. Nancy Mace called people like Sarah McBride, quote unquote, violent and mentally ill. That's what she called Sarah McBride. Violent and mentally ill. But several ex-staffers who work for Mace are now coming out of the woodwork, calling Nancy Mace, quote unquote, delusional and a joke. Mace this year had the highest turnover of congressional staffers, higher than any other member of Congress. Her employees say she's impossible to work for. And some say they were expected to work only on getting her TV shots at the expense of constituent services. Nancy Mace reportedly said it's more important to get me on television 3 to 4 times a day than it is to answer calls from my constituents. This is what ex-staffers are saying. A political consultant who was hired by Nancy Mace announced he fired Nancy Mace as a client because, quote, I'm not a babysitter. I'm not a sex therapist or a doctor who can prescribe fixes for chemical imbalances, unquote. He also said, I don't have time for her constant egotistical bullshit and drama in my life. The consultant who fired Nancy Mace, I mean, these are political consultants. They will do anything for, how bad do you have to be? Consultants will do anything for money. How bad do you have to be to get fired by a political consultant? He added that, quote, mental health is a serious issue. I want her to get better and seek treatment. He added, quote, it seems that I hurt Nancy's feelings. Can't wait for her to throw that victim card down again. It's really her only play. A pitiful embarrassment to the South Carolina voters, unquote. You might remember last week, Nancy Mace showed up to work with her arm in a sling, claiming a pro-transgender man shook her hand at a party violently. Her brain should be in a sling. Witnesses at the event said Nancy Mace is lying. But Nancy Mace had the man arrested by Capitol Police anyway, while witnesses were tearfully objecting After this incident, ex-staffers for Nancy Mace immediately accused Mace of lying about the incident. Well, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I am psychotic. And I do know that if you're a United States Congresswoman and you have all the power and influence that comes with being a United States Congresswoman, and you squander it all by attacking members of the transgender community, spreading baseless lies, calling them violent and mentally ill, well, in my humble opinion, that makes you violent and mentally ill. This woman is on Twitter nonstop, 70 tweets a day, sometimes 70 tweets attacking the transgender community, attacking the left. I believe, and this is my opinion, that anybody who dedicates their political career to calling the transgender community sick and violent, I think you're sick and violent. I think it's sick. Something's got to be wrong with you to be obsessed with, bad toilet training. Something happened during the anal phase of her development that she's worried that daddy is going to come into the bathroom. And this creates violence. The transgender community are some of the most unsafe people in America, especially when it comes to the police. If you're a member of the transgender community and you're attacked, the police sometimes join in on the attack. But what do I know? I think it's wrong that this Tisch is our head of the NYPD. What do I know? I'm not a billionaire like Tisch. We have a billionaire as police commissioner. Well, Speaker Mike Johnson and Donald Trump will enter the new year much weaker than they're going to be than right after Election Day. That's because of Trump's brinksmanship over the government shutdown. He lost. He failed. He didn't get what he wanted. From what we can tell, there are right now 38 Republicans in the House, about 10 in the Senate, who right now are willing to stand up to Donald Trump. We'll see. We'll see. The continuing resolution passed after a third try on Friday. It was not the one Trump or Elon Musk demanded. You might recall Mike Johnson's first continuing resolution never got a vote. He didn't bring it to the floor because it was rejected by Elon Musk and Donald Trump. They said, don't bring it to the floor. Rewrite it. They demanded it include raising the debt ceiling so that Trump will be able to take office and he can introduce legislation giving tax cuts to the rich without having to fight over the debt ceiling. Trump literally said, he just said it out in the open. If the debt ceiling is raised now, then Biden gets the blame. To his credit, he's a liar, but he also tells the truth. Like when he fired Comey. And then he went on NBC News the next day and said, I fired him because he wouldn't make the Russiagate investigation go away. He does a lot of things out in the open. Now, Musk and Trump warned Republicans to vote for the second version of the continuing resolution, the one they crafted. Musk and Trump publicly warned any Republican who doesn't do what they're told will face primary challenges during the midterms. Right now, they're threatening primary challenges. once he has control of the FBI, it's going to be more than primary challenges. He's going to be able to open up some files, blackmail, and of course, physical violence. And if you don't believe me, ask all the Republicans who headed for the doors this year. Ask them what happened when Jim Jordan was running for Speaker and all the death threats House Republicans got, their wives got, when they weren't going to vote for Jim Jordan. You might remember, though, this is strong-arming House Republicans. This is what Donald Trump is going to be doing. He's going to strong-arm Democrats and Republicans. This is exactly how I said Joe Biden should deal with obstructionists in his own party. Senators like Manchin and Sinema, who killed Build Back Better, which was a sweeping multi-trillion-dollar spending bill that was Bernie's. It would have included, among other things, free tuition at all public universities, universal daycare, lowering the age of Medicare recipients. It was great. It turned into a stripped-down bill called the Inflation Reduction Act. Pretty amazing. One of the most transformative pieces of legislation in American history. But it wasn't Build Back Better. And I kept saying Joe Biden has to be like Lyndon Johnson, and he has to call Manchin in and Sinema, and you sit them down and you say, look, son, if I get your vote, I'll build bridges in your name, and if you don't, I'm going to hold rallies in your state, and I'm going to challenge you in the primaries. In the end, Joe Biden wouldn't do that. And in the end, Sinema and Manchin quit both the Democratic Party and the Senate. In our system of government, the way it's designed, and Joe Biden, unlike Lyndon Johnson, honored our founding fathers, you can't get members of your own party to do what you tell them. You really can't blackmail them with bridges in their name, universities in your name, and you also can't threaten them with physical violence. But this is how Trump is probably going to try to run the Republican Congress, through stochastic terrorism, threats of violence. We were reminded, however, this week that Trump lacks the disposition to be anything resembling an effective leader, if you're following the law. He's an excellent politician. I'll give him that. He won. I think he won. I'm not going to go there, so I think he won. I will say I think he won. I just find it a little suspicious that in 6 swing states, the marquee down-ballot Democrat won either the race for Senate or governor, but Kamala Harris didn't. I just find that odd. And Casey in Pennsylvania almost won Pennsylvania. I just find that odd. That Stein in Kentucky won, but Harris didn't. Gallego won in Arizona. Harris didn't. Jackie Rosen won in Nevada, but Harris didn't. Tammy Baldwin won in Wisconsin, but Harris didn't. Elisa Slotkin won in Michigan, but Harris didn't. And Casey almost won in Pennsylvania. But Donald Trump is a great politician. But he's a horrible leader. He's in business and in government, a horrible leader. He accomplished pretty much nothing the last time he was president. Well, he did kill 1 million Americans by crapping the bed with COVID. That if you have a dark heart and want to see suffering, as many Americans do, that's pretty good. 1 million kills. That's pretty good. But he basically accomplishes nothing unless it's what the old guard establishment Republicans want. In other words, his signature legislation was that massive tax cut in 2017. That passed. Paul Ryan was the speaker. That passed because old guard establishment Republicans wanted that. And they were willing to look the other way on everything else as long as you cut our taxes. And he was able to appoint more than 200 judges, including three Supreme Court justices. But that's because Mitch McConnell, who Trump hates, Mitch McConnell was the majority leader in the Senate. And that's what the establishment Republicans wanted. Through executive order, Donald Trump is able to torture members of our immigrant community. But that's pretty much all he was able to do by himself without the establishment Republicans. He was not able to get Congress to bend to his will. This time around, he's learned his lesson. He will have to rely on the threat of physical violence or blackmail to get everyone to fall in line. Who knows? After January 6, 147 Republicans, while still smelling the pepper spray and the feces in Statuary Hall, 147 Republicans bent to Donald Trump's will hours after January 6 and voted to overturn the 2020 election results. They voted not to certify for Joe Biden. Still wasn't enough. Biden was certified. So we'll see what happens. It will be terrifying. We will see what happens. Again, on Friday, 38 Republicans defied Trump and voted for the third version of the continuing resolution that ended up getting signed into law, despite Musk and Trump warning those 38 House Republicans, we don't want you voting for it. We want the debt ceiling lifted. That's not included in this continuing resolution. If you vote for this, we will punish you. But 38 Republicans in the House held their ground. We'll see. Well, what are the numbers? What do we have to look forward to? I'm holding my worst case scenario mug. So I'm going to go over some numbers here with humility, okay? Although I called every state race correctly except Pennsylvania. I got Casey wrong and Harris wrong, but I got Kentucky right. I got North Carolina right. I got Arizona right. Nevada. I got Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. And I got about 7 key state Senate and governor's races correct. Just didn't get her right. But he won. Anyway, I was wrong. I got it wrong. Somebody said they're going to buy the worst case scenario mug because they wrote, I still have hope. I still think. This was like a week after the election. I still have hope she can win. Okay, so as I hold my worst case scenario mug, what are the numbers? Well, after the November election, the GOP kept the House, but with a 5-seat majority. Okay. There are members of the Freedom Caucus who represent deep red districts who might consider themselves immune to a primary challenge from a MAGA Republican funded by Elon Musk. House Republican Chip Roy, for example, he was just reelected. He represents a district in Texas. He was just reelected with 62% of the vote. That's a landslide. And so I don't know how scared he is of a primary challenge from Donald Trump, whose wrath he earned 4 years ago after he went against the more than 147 House Republicans and voted to certify the election for Joe Biden. Chip Roy, he is what he is. He has principles. I detest his principles, but he has principles. And he's angry, and he did certify for Joe Biden. And last week he defied Trump's orders and voted against the second continuing resolution, the one Musk and Trump ordered him to vote for. Chip Roy not only voted against it, he publicly called it asinine. He said, I will not support lifting the debt ceiling for Joe Biden or Donald Trump because our national debt, he said, is out of control. Roy is consistent. When the third version of the continuing resolution finally passed, he was still voting against it, which means he and just a handful of others will be able to kill Trump's massive tax cut for the rich next year, unless Trump can prove that there will be massive cuts in spending to pay for this massive tax cut. There weren't massive cuts in spending in the 2017 tax cut. That's why Trump added $8 trillion to our national debt. He left office responsible for 1/3 of our country's entire debt. Well, why is this important? Trump is threatening to invade Panama, right? Every day it's a news cycle that he tries to control. His job is to bring sideshows and fireworks, distractions to Washington. The reason he has the support of our oligarchs is because they do not want anything to get done in Washington because they oppose government. So the more smoke bombs that Donald Trump tosses into the wind, the happier the oligarchs are. Trump gets to do all of this so long as he creates just enough distraction so nobody sees why he was sent to Washington, which is to soak the government. Soak the government for the rich. And that means cutting taxes. You can get away with rape. You can get away with an insurrection. Just cut my taxes. I don't care what you do. Just cut my taxes and rack up debt. The rich want debt because that gives them treasury bills to purchase. And treasury bills are the safest investment in the world. They're guaranteed by the full faith and credit of the United States. Cut my taxes, rack up debt, so I have treasury bills to buy, and also rack up more debt by giving me government contracts so we can fly in space or build weapons we don't need or turn our post office over to me and my private contractors. The number one reason Trump was sent back to the White House, above all else, maybe Project 2025, dismantle the administrative state, get rid of regulation, all that. But he won the oligarchs' votes, and a lot of Americans voted for him because of the massive tax cut. He did it in 2017, and those tax cuts expire next year. Joe Biden kept saying, you vote for me, I'm not going to renew them. Kamala Harris, not so much. She didn't talk too much about the tax cuts. But who had time to talk about policy when everybody was so joyful? Well, we'll see. Instead of deifying Trump, 38 Republicans on Friday defied him, specifically over raising the debt ceiling. Now, let's go over the numbers. Of those 38, all it's going to take is 2 or 3 Republicans to oppose Donald Trump's tax cut. It's all it's going to take in the House. I'm picking up my worst case scenario mug. So just to remind you, I'm completely full of shit. But here's the math. All it's going to take is 2 or 3 Republicans to oppose Trump's tax cut, and it's dead. In fact, all it's going to take is 2 or 3 Republicans in the House over the next year to defy Trump, and he won't be able to pass a single piece of legislation, nothing. And what does that mean? It means that we just had the most transformative president since Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Joe Biden, who accomplished more in 2 years than Obama accomplished in 8. There's been massive change, massive change. A lot of that money that was has not been allocated. The money from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, the money from the CHIPS Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act, that's still going out the door. So, like, expanding the Internal Revenue Service. Right now, our job is to protect all of Joe Biden's gains. So, and I think that's what Kamala Harris's first 2 or 3 years in office were going to be. Just protecting what Joe Biden achieved. I want more, but I realistically, given the current state of the Democratic Party, even if Kamala Harris won with control of the House and the Senate, we weren't going to see Medicare for all. We were going to see her enshrining all of Joe Biden's accomplishments. So, Trump, despite what he claims, did not win with a mandate. John Nichols is national affairs correspondent for The Nation, and he writes this morning over at The Nation that if only 115,000 votes in 3 battleground states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, if 115,000 votes went the other way to Harris, Trump would have lost the Electoral College. Not a mandate. He did win the popular vote, but he didn't top 50% or come close to Biden's numbers in 2020. I think what you're going to see during the next 2 years is Trump. I'm being hopeful here. I think he's not going to be able to keep his promises legislatively. I hope, again, I'm holding my worst case scenario map. I think he's going to attempt to rule through executive order. But you got to remember, each executive order will be delayed. It will be forced to wind. Each executive order he makes will have to wind its way through our courts. Trump is going to issue on day one executive order after another, reversing all of Joe Biden's executive orders on climate change and student debt relief. But because executive orders are not acts of Congress, they are eventually decided by the courts. And we all know the Supreme Court can't be bought. According to a new Senate report issued on Saturday morning, since 1990, Clarence Thomas has accepted nearly $5 million in gifts. I have heard that if you add up all the gifts that Supreme Court justices have received, Abe Fortas, I think, got $18,000 for some speeches, so he had to quit the Supreme Court. If you add up all the gifts given to every single Supreme Court justice since the beginning of U.S. history, Clarence Thomas alone has accepted more. But, you know, he's generous. He takes gifts, accepts them, but he gives them out. Like for Christmas, his wife Ginny, for Christmas, he bought his unhinged wife Ginny a brand new sable straitjacket. I mean, look at the disgusting, ratty old straitjacket Ginny Thomas has to wear in her padded cell. I cannot wait till she gets her Christmas gift, the white sable straitjacket. Can't wait to see her all dolled up in her padded room in her white sable straitjacket. So, what Trump has is a somewhat compliant Supreme Court, as well as several hundred emergency powers granted to him by Congress back in 1975. Theoretically, Congress gave this to the president. Theoretically, a president can declare a national emergency and order our troops, our National Guard, to arrest anyone, suspend habeas corpus, seize control of any government building or agency he so wishes. I think it only applies to federal agencies. Okay, those are national emergencies. You might remember the Oath Keepers testified during their sedition trial, where they were convicted. They were expecting Donald Trump to invoke the Insurrection Act on January 6th. They were expecting to be deputized by President Trump on January 6th. That's why they bought all those weapons and took them to Washington. They were expecting Donald Trump to invoke the Insurrection Act. Well, during yesterday's speech in Arizona, Trump once again promised, quote, the largest deportation operation in American history. He said, quote, on my first day back in the Oval Office, I will sign a historic slate of executive orders to close our border to illegal aliens and stop the invasion of our country. He is calling this imaginary migrant crisis at the border, he's calling it an invasion by an enemy. These are people we need in our country. In the past, Trump has promised he's going to declare on day one a national emergency. He's going to declare that America has been invaded by immigrants, and he's going to authorize, he says, ICE and our military to round them up, to go door to door. I'm not sure if he will attempt to follow through with this promise. But on day one, there will be a test of his appetite, the Republican Party's appetite, and the American people's appetite for authoritarian rule. I don't know much. I get a lot of things wrong, but I can assure you the lurch to fascism begins with going after immigrants. It's what fascists always do. They attack the enemy within. And I'm not sure, but I think this is where the entire system will be tested. And if he gets his way with the mass deportations, well, then he'll be able to get away with everything else. And his dream of becoming Xi or Putin will come true. Stephen Miller has been given the position of Deputy White House Chief of Staff. Sounds pretty innocuous, doesn't it? Deputy Chief of Staff? Well, the Chief of Staff is the most powerful person in the White House. The Chief of Staff runs everything. He makes sure the president's orders are obeyed, and there is pretty much zero congressional oversight. The Chief of Staff is not approved by the Senate. Deputy Chief of Staff, not approved by the Senate. And because the Chief of Staff works so intimately with the president, because the Deputy Chief of Staff works so intimately with the president, much of what they and the president discuss is protected by executive privilege. Congress would have to go through a very long, drawn-out process of suing Trump to get its hands on emails or testimony from White House officials regarding the activities of the Chief of Staff, or in Stephen Miller's case, the Deputy Chief of Staff. Now, we have a white nationalist, Stephen Miller, as coming in as Deputy Chief of Staff. Susie Wiles will be Trump's Chief of Staff. She was Trump's campaign manager. She's also Pat Summerall's daughter. The football great, Pat Summerall, and he was a CBS sportscaster. Susie Wiles is Pat Summerall's daughter. She's also a lobbyist. She'll have power in the White House, maybe. My suspicion, though, is she will be Trump's first sacrifice. When something breaks and he needs to give the media some red meat, Susie Wiles will be thrown out. But Stephen Miller, he's her deputy. I suspect he'll be way more influential in the Trump White House than Susie Wiles is ever going to be. She'll be running everything. He'll be very focused. Stephen Miller, he's going to have one job: satisfying the bloodlust of MAGA supporters. And he has a history with Donald Trump. They go way back to the first administration. Stephen Miller never left Donald Trump's side and has worked quietly as his speechwriter. And, of course, has been instrumental in keeping the war on immigrants alive during the 4 years of Donald Trump's winter of discontent. Miller worked in the first Trump White House, designed the family separation policy. He, according to one book, suggested in a meeting that Trump order the military to fire weapons and kill the people on a boat heading towards the United States. That boat was carrying migrants. Stephen Miller said during the campaign that when it comes to immigration, is that a picture of, where is Stephen Miller? Is he in that picture? I don't see him. Let's take that picture down, please. That is not a picture of Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller said during the campaign that when it comes to immigration, Trump's first 100 days will be, quote unquote, a blitzkrieg. It was in the New York Times. Google it. Stephen Miller said Trump will order ICE to move so fast, so big, that the entire system will be overwhelmed and there won't be enough immigration lawyers to accommodate the needs of all the people he plans to throw out of our country. What is to prevent this? Well, there's economics. Throwing immigrants out will crash this economy. We know this. We won't be able to get our food from the farm to our tables. Construction will come to a complete halt. Manufacturing will stop. So, because of greed, I have a sneaking suspicion because this country is so greedy, he is not going to succeed. A pretty good case scenario might be Trump attempting a show of force, public pageants of cruelty where ICE terrorizes a few neighborhoods. People are videotaped. We see on our news people of babies crying, few families separated, and Trump will have kept his promise to MAGA supporters that I will satisfy your bloodlust. You vote for me, and I promise you there will be suffering. That's an okay, I mean, it's pretty nasty. I mean, if you were going to pick someone to be border czar, to scare, to terrorize, it would be Tom Homan. So I'm thinking maybe he's just going to focus more on the visuals than the actualities, but he didn't do it. He was pretty horrible his first term. Family separation, the deporting. Biden hasn't been so great, but Biden's deported more than Trump. This could have been a teaching moment for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They should have gone to Springfield, Ohio. They should have talked to the Republican businessmen who hired the Haitian immigrants. They should have pointed out that there are hundreds of mid-sized towns desperately in need of these migrants. They're offering $15,000 to move to parts of Kansas. We have a population implosion. Franklin Delano Roosevelt would have used the immigration issue as a teaching moment to explain why these people are a gift and not a burden. I will get back to crapping on the Democratic Party. This is the season for vitriol, directed at Trump and the Republicans and the Democrats. I fall in line in 2025, when are the midterms? 2026. Starting around March of 2026, I become a faithful Democrat. But right now, there needs to be a purge in this party of rich people. Got to get rid of the rich people. I rambled. Okay. So, sorry about the rambling. Something to keep in mind is Congress controls the power of the purse. This is why you should be hopeful, but this is why you have to write letters and protest and pick up your phone. We still don't have a budget for 2025. When Trump takes office, ICE, the INS, the entire government will be funded by a temporary stopgap measure that was just passed on Friday. Funding for the government runs out on March 14th of next year. This is where it gets hopeful. Ever since desegregation efforts by the federal government, the Republicans have been champions of states' rights, or federalism. But now, with Republicans about to control the White House, the Senate, the House of Representatives, and the Supreme Court, Democrats are becoming the champions of states' rights. All of a sudden, Republicans who despise Washington, D.C. aren't despising it so much now that they control so much of it. When Newt Gingrich led a revolution in 1994, with Republicans taking back control of the House for the first time in 40 years, he introduced the threat of government shutdowns to bend Democratic presidents like Bill Clinton and democratically controlled senates to his will. We really didn't have the threat of a government shutdown until Newt Gingrich. Government shutdowns are politically unpopular nationally. But on a granular level, for House Republicans who represent deep red districts, somebody like Chip Roy, government shutdowns are red meat for their voters. It's what gets people like Chip Roy reelected, fighting for a government shutdown. But what we may be looking at over the next 2 years is a shift where it's the Democrats who not only embrace states' rights, they also embrace government shutdowns. If Donald Trump attempts to carry out this Hitlerian Gestapo-like roundup of undocumented Americans, the courts might fail us, which is why the only real defense we might have is shutting down the government, making certain ICE doesn't have the funding. The Democrats will be the ones shutting down the government. Perhaps. This is what is called a stress test. Doctors will check your heart by putting you on a treadmill to see what you can handle. The Federal Reserve conducts stress tests to see what the banking system has in the way of capital, should there be a sharp economic downturn. It's a stress test. We did pretty well during the 4 years that Donald Trump was in office. Pretty good. You might remember, in terms of, yeah, we did pretty good. You might remember Speaker Nancy Pelosi ripping up Donald Trump's State of the Union speech in February of 2020. That occurred during Trump's first impeachment trial. As Speaker, Nancy Pelosi already got Donald Trump impeached for his phone call to Zelensky. Remember, Trump held up a shipment of arms to Ukraine in exchange for dirt on Hunter Biden. When she ripped up that speech at the State of the Union, Trump had already been impeached. His trial in the Senate was going on during his 2020 State of the Union. And then she impeached him less than a year later. They had warned during the Senate trial, if you let him off the hook, he'll think he's free to do other things. Turned out to be right. And then he was impeached and wasn't convicted because Mitch McConnell said we should let the courts that I have stocked with fine Republicans, we should let the courts decide Donald Trump's fate. After Donald Trump wrapped up that State of the Union in 2020, the speech got torn up. Trump was acquitted by the Senate. COVID struck, and Biden won in November. We passed that stress test. We did pretty good. The Democrats, we got to get rid of Nancy Pelosi. I mean, she is the problem. Joe Biden is not the problem. But rich Democrats are the problem. But she passed the stress test for democracy during the Trump years. Who will stand up to Trump? It's less than a month away. Republicans with slim majorities in the House and Senate, they're the ones we're going to have to find two. All it takes is 2 or 3 to stop him. It's all it's going to take. I believe, and I pray I'm wrong, the first real threat will be to the immigrants. And I've been saying this since November 6th. It's the immigrants, the migrants. I don't doubt that Donald Trump will attempt to act big. I hope I'm wrong, but I wouldn't be surprised if Trump declares a national emergency during his inaugural address. In 1976, I think it was 1976, Congress passed a law, maybe it was 1975. I know it was after Watergate. Sometime in the mid to late 70s, the mid-70s, Congress passed a law giving the president national emergency powers, which amounts pretty much to complete control over every federal agency. Congress was supposed to have power to authorize these emergency declarations, but Elise Workus at Protect Democracy writes that a 1983 Supreme Court ruling made presidential emergencies much easier to declare and much harder for Congress to end. The migrants, the immigrants. That's our first line of defense. If you want to save this country, you save the migrants and you save the immigrants. If he gets away with any of it, or comes close to getting away with this, well, I'm not making any predictions. We shall see. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Thank you very much for listening to me this morning. There will be no show tomorrow. There will be no show. I'm probably going to do a show early Friday morning at 2:30. I'm going to try to take a couple of days off. I think I'm going to take 2 days off and just stare at the wall. Maybe I'll do a show. I don't know. But anyway, and then I'm going to keep working. Thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room. Leonard, I don't know if I have to work with Leonard to be a moderator. Please share this episode with your friends. That's the best way to help me. If you enjoy any of this garbage, please share it with your friends. The only reason I have the audience that I do have is because of my audience. This is a grassroots. There's Robert Smigel and Sam Cedar, and nobody else has helped me other than the audience for sharing. So that's the best way to help. I do think it's going to be okay. I'm optimistic. You have to be. But you have to be angry. But I'm optimistic. Expect the worst, but hope for the best. But we still have a phone. We still have a post office. You can call your members of Congress. You can write letters, make your voice heard. But don't be stupid. If you're going to protest, don't get beaten up. Try not to get beaten up. Don't knock on the doors of Nazis like that woman did with Nick Fuentes. I mean, don't engage with Nazis unless it's in the courts, unless you do it the right way. Okay, goodbye. Thank you so much. Really, thank you.